excited to be here. My name is Epitacio Robledo from Clifton Associates, Mexico. It's much easier to remember Epi. So that in the world I'm known as Epi. And thank you so much for inviting me to these sessions, which, by the way, have caused a headache in my current existence. It's because I need to jump from an preaching or an academic way of talking and discussing things and sharing information to something that is tangible. That is the single most important item that we all as a team, as a world citizens need to take into account. To being tangible, being real, being actionable, being able to measure and whatever it is that we do. I'm going to piggyback on some of the words and discussions. For example, what Dana was mentioning about the numbers, and some of the questions. How do we verify? If I'm a company and I want to buy a project and I check the rating, and the rating is high, it's attractive. If the rating is low, it's not attractive. It doesn't mean I won't look into it. I was still going to do due diligence. I would check the studies, and see what the actual risk is, and translate into my own philosophy or my own corporation, and see if I will buy that project with a high rating or with a medium rating, or something even a high risk. It's a problem, but as I always say, the problem is not the problem. The problem is how we look at the problem. So the problem is when you don't know that there is a problem. If you know, you can fix it, hopefully. And having said that, today we will discuss, well, I need to talk a little about myself. I'm an environmental scientist. I've been working in the mining sector for over 20 years. My company, Clifton, has been working in the mining sector for over 20 years as well. And I'm going to share my screen. Whoa, there we go.
I'm sure it will start sharing soon. Here we go. Okay. There we go. Beautiful. Thank you very much, Eddie.
And as I said, we'll be discussing some of the environmental and social baseline studies from an ESG perspective, especially on the how to. Just as a general background, we've been working for over 20 years in the mining sector for some of the major and not so major junior companies, but all of the major companies in Mexico. Frisco Mining, Tech, Pan American Silver, Capstone Gold, etc. So we have a lot of experience in the mining sector, and not just across different types of clients, but at all stages of mining, from prospecting, from exploration to construction to operation, all the way through closure. Some of these guys, we've been working with them for 20 years. Some of them over 20 years. So we've been involved in all of the phases in the mine life, in the cycle. We also will work in the renewable energy sector, the industrial sector, and infrastructure. However, about 80% of our work is aimed towards mining. Environmental and social baseline studies. In simple terms, it is data gathering, understanding, and knowing the pre-existing and ongoing conditions at our project site, our adjacent land, the regional area. It's pretty much about knowing the dynamics from an environmental and social perspective. We also need to take into account that it is hard to materialize a mining project into an actual operation. Even if we do the science right, the geology right, the processing right, we still are dependent on the on the tectonics of the commodities market. Prices go up, everybody's happy. Prices go down, projects get paused. It is important to take into account ESG from environmental and social baseline as early as possible. And it is an issue that is becoming extremely important day by day, especially in regards to environmental and social impacts before the project takes place, and also as part of the protection for our investment. We're talking about, I won't go into too much detail, but it's geochemistry, water quality, biodiversity, efficient water habitats, demographics, park community dynamics, indigenous people, diagnosis of the area, protected species, etc. It is something that has to be done by a multidisciplinary team. It is a scale that must be adapted to each project. It will be local, it will be semi-local, it will be regional. It depends on the project size and the actual conditions around our project. Baseline studies are very important for assessment, for pre-existing conditions, to support technical reports for permitting purposes, for mitigation, avoidance, compensation measures. As I said, we will be working on different scales, detailed at project site, semi-detailed around the project site, and pretty much general in the regional area, except when we find the specific items that need additional investigations. Baseline involves sampling, characterization, quantification, interviews, etc. It is important to remember that there will be impacts that are real and there are impacts that are perceived, and the environmental and social baseline will help differentiate those. A well-executed baseline can ease concerns from community, from authorities, from investors, etc. It allows for the early identification of negative impacts as well as positive impacts, or create opportunities. All of this we need to get to execute, thinking about the environmental impact statements, about social impact, forest surveys, risk assessments, technical reports, pre-feasibility, feasibility, project adjustments, project improvement, better efficiency, etc. And baseline studies need to be tailored to the project, and solid baseline will provide grounds for environmental impact analysis, mitigation, and a favorable environmental and social licensing. We should start with environmental baseline and social baseline as soon as possible, pretty much as soon as possible, from a scoping, from a general, from a very specific, but as soon as possible, we will get a better data set, longer time data frames, and it will be more accurate and reliable, the data. There are different approaches. I'm showing some examples from different baselines that we have performed in the past 20 years. Some of this, the baselines have extended. We need to remember that the baseline is not just a one-time deal. It is a tool that will evolve in time along with the life of mine, from baseline, from pre-construction monitoring to compliance, to operating operation and monitoring during operation, through data gathering to design our mine closure plan. And when we get into closure, we still carry out environmental monitoring, which is also an extension of baseline. We have done studies, environmental baseline and social baseline, some projects that have given enough information to stop the project. That's to say, no, this is we do not have the answers at this moment in time, so we'll just stop this project for 5, 6, 10 years, and we'll come back when we get more land or different engineering or different technology, etc. So the metrics that I'm showing you in this 11 years for all of these projects is in dollars invested for environmental and social baseline. So it's very variable. Some projects start with very specific items. Other projects start with a full set of environmental and social studies. It will be adjusted and it will be tailored to each project. The benefits include the ease of mind of the community, the authorities, based on a solid scientific approach. It would be the definition of the mitigation and compensation programs, as well as set-asides and offsets, risk reduction or for additional environmental and social studies during permitting processes, and the process of approving an environmental impact statement will tend to advance in time and in a predictable manner. The benefits with a well-documented ESBS becomes an asset. It is a key item when deciding whether to invest or not in a project. And there is an increasing demand for well-documented environmental and social baseline studies for a target project, especially when there is a potential buying of a project. We want to reach our value or add value or create value for a project at the same time that we lower the risk. It's basically we want to improve our metrics. I have some very conceptual scenarios. Worst case scenario is an environmental baseline that is not properly executed or not executed really, which would pose significant capital cost down the line from from feasibility to construction, operation, on all the way through reclamation. An ideal environmental and social baseline is properly executed in scale, timing, processing, and it comes with the strategy. The risk will be known and opportunities will be created. The environmental and social issues will be integrated into the project plan, and the environmental studies will continue across the life of mine in terms of control, compliance, compensation, closure design, etc. There will be sufficient data for the design of a reclamation plan in terms of a positive legacy and for environmental, social, economic. So I see basically two anchors with a whole bunch of points in between. We want to make a profit and we want a positive legacy. And the road for that is to be responsible. It's to do things well, to comply with the laws, exceed with the laws, and use all of the tools that are available out there. It's, for example, ICMM says that they encourage mining companies to embrace good practice, environmental and social governance as part of their requirements. Another guy, Larry Fink for BlackRock, it says that, well, those companies that address sustainability risk will encounter those that do not address risks, they will encounter skepticism and a higher cost of capital. It's basically less attractive if you're not performing well. So this is on the why, or how do we get there. We know the science, we know physics, we know chemistry, we know biology, we know geochemistry, biodiversity. All of the tools are out there. So the science part is not really a problem. It's not a problem for environmental and social baseline. It's when we start looking at the whole system, at the dismantle card that I just saw, it's that you start to identify certain components such as internal risks. You need to consider ESG and environmental and social studies from the mine life cycle. It is unreal to think about all of this in a one-year budget. If mining is thought in a 10, 20, 30-year cycles, we need to look at ESG and environmental studies and social studies in the same time frame. Otherwise, we won't get anywhere, really. One example, I wanted to quote BlackRock. It's a mine site that was being owned. It was owned by a large company that they thought it wasn't big enough for them. These guys are huge. So, but they carried out an environmental baseline and a social baseline, and they sold it. They spent $15 million on this company, and they sold it on exploration, social and environmental studies for 4 years, and they sold it for $154 million because they added good value to that project. The new company came in, junior company, and now it's triple the size of what it thought it was supposed to be. They gained value, and one of the main investors is BlackRock. And the next guy that is investing in this project is another corporation investment funds. And the third guy that is investing is also an investment company. So they are paying attention to all of this. It is a very strong card. Environmental and social value or studies play a big card when you buy or when you sell. We have also principles and standards and development goals, and we want to go from a rating that is not so good to something that is a little better to something that is attractive to someone else or the investors. We want money to keep coming in so that we can generate more profit. And all of these tools are so that we can do it in a responsible manner. Then what is the problem? Because I do see problems, and it's and we want to be a responsible citizen of the world. And this is where I start to borrow stuff from other guys. I see this toolbox for responsible sourcing, and I love it. And I look at the 20 years of experience, and I feel that I have great success in some projects, in some areas, and not such a great success in other projects in certain areas. No, not one single project has been successful entirely. They are operating, they are happy, the community needs to be maintained, but there are always problems. And one of the shared problems is that I feel that this is an automatic car that is being driven by someone that drives a stick and uses 2 feet and is accelerating and braking at the same time. So you go fast at the same time that you stop the whole machinery. And we tend to look at ESG from a 6 month, 1 year, or from one single stage, not from the entire life of mind or from the mind cycle. And I've seen, this is one example of, for example, 2 projects. They are pretty much the same size, and they have pretty much the same environmental problems or issues. And one of them says, I cannot spend that much money because I am a copper company. And the other guy is, I'm not a gold company. I don't have as much money. Well, they need to take into account that, because you have the same problem. You have the same type of structure. You have the same physical, chemical, and biological issues as the other guy. So it doesn't matter if it's silver or gold, it's still a heap leach pile that will need to be stabilized from a physical, chemical, and biological perspective, and they require pretty much the same. It doesn't matter if you're gold or copper. It's and that I've heard that for tailings and for other stuff. So what is going on? I think we live in bubbles. It's I just heard some keywords such as collaboration, relationship, understanding, willingness, and we need to be smart, and we need to keep the dialogue going, and everybody needs to understand that all of this, all of the answers, they will come with time and money. Money, it doesn't mean that that it will be more expensive. It would just mean that instead of spending it down the line, you will have to spend it now to protect your future investment. It will be an expense if you decide not to keep going, but it's better to stop rather than risk the rest of the investment. So we live in bubbles. One bubble is the community and the stakeholders. Then when you have international entities and standards and principles and all of that, we have environmental and social baseline that take into account physical, chemical, biological, social, legal issues and parameters. And then we have the government, and we have financing and investors, and we have corporate. And corporate right now, they should be ESG committed at all levels, at all times, and everywhere. I've heard something such as I need support from corporate, from headquarters, or headquarters said, no, the entire responsibility belongs to each unit. They need to be self-sustaining. And I've heard that environmental department is sometimes do not have the resources that they need, or community relations, they do not have the resources. They all need to chip in. They all need to understand. They all need, and this goes from our exploration to construction, to operations, to reclamation, to monitoring, so that we can actually have a positive legacy. Examples, huge examples. I've heard for example, water quality. It's an issue. We need to work on this, and we're working on this. And then we need to bring in community relations to take into account not just environmental issues, but also community and water quality for the community. And community relations says, we want our communities to be tested as well. Great. We do not have the budget. You have to pay for that. Well, it's very tricky. So managing time, managing the money, doing stuff that you need to do, collecting data. It's what is worse than identifying a problem? Not identifying the problem. A problem can be solved. The project that I showed that was bought by a junior company, it wasn't a blank canvas. It had social conflicts. It had blockades, but everything was documented and translated and processed, and we knew the issues and we knew how to solve them. The project was just not big enough for the big company. So, but everything was well documented, and the problem was identified, and the problem was solved. And they still need to keep working on that. Once you have a problem, you need to keep working. And if you don't have a problem, you still need to keep working so that it doesn't take place down the road. So I have several takeaways, but the best takeaway that I can think of, it's a real tangible environmental and social baseline, and everything that has to do with environmental and social governance needs to be consistent throughout the entire organization at all stages, in the appropriate scope, scale that is suitable for each phase. A lot of this is thought as an expense. It's not an expense. An expense will be something that doesn't give you a return, a profit, or risk reduction. If you collect data, but not enough, it may be an expense. If you collect too much data, then it also becomes an expense. I've been part of the problem. I have been, I don't know, 15 years ago, I found an arsenic problem, and I started studying it for 3 years. Now, if I find an arsenic problem after 6 months, I'm in the opinion that let's not keep studying it. Let's work on the solution. We know that there's a problem. We don't need to know if it's arsenic 3 or arsenic 5. I've seen a lot of guys working on dust modeling, for example. It's and spending $100,000, $200,000 on dust modeling. We know there's dust. Let's spend it on engineering to prevent dust, or road stabilization, or the fine material will need to be covered by the coarse material to reduce the dust. Let's not, we know the problem. So let's work on the solutions.
I couldn't agree with you more there, Epi. I think that is absolutely fantastic. Let's work on those solutions. So ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the wonderful Epi. That was truly fantastic.